Scene 1. The cry in the storm. The wind howled through the pines like a wounded spirit, shrieking and sobbing as it raced between the hills of Winterbrook. Snow fell in relentless sheets, cloaking the quiet mountain town in white, muffling every sound until even the creak of a front porch step felt like an echo of a world slowly vanishing beneath the blizzard's weight. Inside the Carter household, the glow of a table lamp cast soft halos across the living room, a fragile warmth against the roar of nature outside. Eleanor moved briskly between the kitchen and pantry, checking batteries, candles, and counting canned food with a practiced urgency. Her husband, Daniel, was in the garage, his breath misting as he tested the backup generator. They had seen their fair share of snowstorms, but this one felt different. The weatherman's voice still rang in Eleanor's mind. Unprecedented, life-threatening, historic low temperatures. Words that crawled under your skin and stayed there. At the living room window stood 5-year-old Liam, his golden hair lit like a halo by the lamp beside him. His small hands pressed against the cold glass, his breath fogging the surface as he stared into the swirling twilight. "Mommy," he asked softly without turning, "how much snow will there be?" Eleanor looked up, her voice gentler than her thoughts. "Enough to build 10 snowmen, sweetie." He turned, eyes wide with excitement. "Can we build one tomorrow?" "We'll see," she replied, her smile tight. The truth was, she wasn't sure they'd be able to open the front door by morning, let alone play in the snow. Daniel stepped in, shaking snow from his coat and rubbing his hands together. "Generators ready. Fireplace too." Their eyes met in silent understanding. This storm wasn't just a winter inconvenience, it was something to be endured. "Daddy, it's getting really loud out there," Liam said, not moving from his vigil at the window. "That's just the wind showing off," Daniel said with a chuckle, ruffling his son's hair. But Liam didn't laugh. He leaned in closer to the window, pressing his nose against the frosted glass. "There's something out there," he whispered. "It's stuck." Eleanor and Daniel exchanged a quick glance. This was typical of Liam's vivid imagination. "Honey, it's probably just snow," Eleanor called. "Come help me count these batteries."
"No, Mommy, look," Liam pointed urgently. "Something moved."
Daniel sighed and stepped beside his son, peering out into the snow. Nothing. Just the swirling white void. But then, a flicker. A shift in the drift near the driveway. A shape, dark, vague, hunched. Dark, vague.
"I don't see."
"There!" Liam cried. It moved again. A second passed, then another, and then, through the shrieking wind, something soft, something broken. A whimper. Barely audible. But there, Daniel froze.
"You heard it too," Liam whispered, eyes wide.
Eleanor joined them, frowning. "What are you two?" Another whimper, louder this time.
"Daniel," her voice faltered. "It could be a fox or a stray. It's freezing out there. It won't survive."
"I'll be quick," Daniel said, already reaching for his coat. "Daniel, it's not safe," Eleanor called, panic flaring in her chest. "You can't—" "I'll be back in 5 minutes." At the door, Liam tugged his father's sleeve. "Please save it, Daddy." Daniel looked at his son, then at the storm, then nodded. "No promises, okay?" He stepped outside and the storm swallowed him whole. Scene 2. A life on the edge. The storm slammed into Daniel like a wall the moment he stepped outside. The wind tore at his coat, ice crystals stinging his cheeks, and snow, already waist-deep, threatened to pull him down with every step. His flashlight beam was nearly useless, just a narrow tunnel of light swallowed by a blizzard that seemed to scream in protest with every breath he took. He moved slowly, methodically toward the place where Liam had seen movement. There was no trail to follow, just instinct and the ghost of a shadow against the white.
"Hello," he called, his voice torn away by the wind. No response, just silence, then a sound, a whimper, faint but unmistakably alive.
Daniel turned his flashlight, squinting through the snow, and there it was. Half buried in a snowdrift like some forgotten thing the world had decided to discard, lay a large dog. A German shepherd. Its fur was soaked and matted with ice, ears limp, ribs stark beneath its frame. The animal's eyes fluttered weakly open, glazed with pain and exhaustion, then drifted closed again. Daniel's heart clenched.
Oh, God.
This wasn't just a stray caught in a storm. This was an animal that had suffered long before the snow began to fall.
Hey there, he said softly, kneeling in the snow. It's okay. I'm here.
He reached out a gloved hand, letting the dog smell him, though there was no energy left for caution or fear. No flinch, no growl, only the slow, rasping sound of shallow breaths. The wind howled louder, and Daniel knew this creature wouldn't survive the next hour, maybe not even the next 10 minutes. He slid his arms under the dog's freezing body. The animal was shockingly light. It didn't resist. Its head lolled against Daniel's chest like a sack of wet cloth. From the doorway, Liam's small voice pierced the storm. "Did you find it?"
I did, Daniel shouted back. Stay inside.
Every step back to the house felt like dragging a sled through molasses. But the weight in his arms was steady, frighteningly so, too still. Eleanor flung open the door before he reached it. Her eyes widened in alarm when she saw what he carried.
Daniel, what are you doing? She gasped. That's a stray. It could be sick. It could be...
"It's dying," Daniel said firmly, pushing past her into the entryway. "It won't make it through the night." "Daddy, is he okay?" Liam cried, running up to touch the dog's side. "He's so cold."
Don't touch it, Eleanor pulled Liam back. We don't know anything about this animal.
Daniel stood in the hallway, snow melting off his coat, the dog's body limp in his arms, his gaze locked with Eleanor's, quiet but pleading. "I can't just leave it out there to die, not when Liam saw it, not when we have a chance." She hesitated, looked at the soaked creature, at her husband's face, then at her son's tear-filled eyes. "Fine," she muttered, "but not in the house, the garage, and we call animal control the second the storm passes."
Thank you, Daniel breathed.
In the garage, the air was cold but protected. Daniel laid the German shepherd on an old blanket. Eleanor brought more from the hallway closet, thick, camping blankets they had meant to donate. Together they created a soft bed, trying to cradle the creature in what little warmth they could muster.
Will he be okay? Liam whispered. I don't know, buddy, Daniel admitted, kneeling beside the dog. He's in pretty bad shape.
The dog was barely breathing now. His eyes stayed closed, his chest barely rising.
He needs water, Daniel said.
"I'll get some." Liam sprinted into the house before either parent could stop him. Eleanor studied the animal in the garage light. He's starving. Look at his ribs, his paws. They're raw. He's been walking for miles. "Or days," Daniel added grimly. Liam returned with a bowl of water and his favorite teddy bear tucked under one arm. "I brought Benny too," he said solemnly, "so the dog knows he's not alone." He placed the bear gently next to the motionless shepherd. Daniel offered the water near the dog's muzzle, but it didn't move, didn't react.
He's not drinking, Liam said, his voice cracking.
"Sometimes animals need to rest before they can eat or drink," Daniel explained softly.
Is he going to die? Liam asked.
Eleanor flinched. She hadn't wanted this moment. The pain in her child's voice, the rawness of love meeting mortality. "We're doing everything we can," Daniel said, not quite answering. "I want to stay with him," Liam said. "No," Eleanor replied gently but firmly. "You need dinner, a bath, and sleep."
But he'll be alone, Liam whispered, tears welling.
Daniel knelt beside his son. "We'll check on him before bed. He just needs to rest." Liam gave a small nod, glancing back at the dog as they walked out of the garage. Just before Eleanor closed the door, Liam whispered, "Please don't die, please." And behind them, the wind howled louder, as if the storm outside wasn't the only one they'd have to survive tonight. Let me know when you're ready for scene 3, and I'll continue weaving this emotional story forward. Bạn đã nói, scene 3. ChatGPT đã nói. Of course, Ngir, here is scene 3, written with emotional depth and a tender, hopeful tone as the Carter family huddles together against both the blizzard outside and the fear of loss inside. Scene 3. Between life and letting go. The garage door clicked shut behind them, and the quiet inside the house felt heavier than before. Eleanor tried to resume a sense of normalcy. She reheated dinner, laid out the plates, lit a few candles just in case the power gave out again. But none of it mattered. Liam picked at his mashed potatoes, his eyes constantly drifting toward the hallway leading to the garage. His body was in the dining room, but his heart was curled next to a freezing dog just beyond a thin wall. "What if he wakes up and he's scared?" he asked quietly. Daniel looked up. "Dogs are smart, buddy. He'll know he's in a safe place." Eleanor barely touched her own food. She'd been against this from the beginning, bringing a strange, possibly dangerous animal into their home. But watching her son, so fiercely empathetic for such a young child, she found herself beginning to hope, despite everything, that the dog would survive. For Liam's sake, if nothing else. After dinner, Eleanor took Liam upstairs for a warm bath. Daniel seized the chance to check on the dog. The garage was dim and quiet. The space heater hummed softly in the corner, its glow casting long shadows across the concrete floor. The blankets had begun to dry slightly and the space was warmer than before, but not by much. Storm still hadn't moved. Daniel crouched beside him, gently placing a hand near his chest. Faint, so faint, but it was there, breathing. He dipped a clean cloth in warm water and began wiping the mud and ice from the shepherd's fur. The dog twitched slightly under the touch. A flicker of life, a whisper from somewhere deep inside that said, "Don't stop, I'm still here." As Daniel cleaned away more of the grime, he uncovered old scars, thin white lines crisscrossing the dog's legs and side, and fresher ones too, cuts, bruises. What had this animal been through?
"Who hurt you?" Daniel whispered.
And then, barely noticeable, a twitch. The dog's tail thumped once, then again, weak, so weak, but undeniably there. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. "You're still fighting." Upstairs, Eleanor struggled to distract Liam with stories of snowmen and sleds, but he refused his usual bedtime routine. "No story," he said firmly, "but you promised I could see him again." Eleanor hesitated, then sighed. "Okay, one quick look." They padded quietly down the stairs and into the garage. Daniel looked up from his spot beside the dog, his face unreadable. "How is he?" Liam asked, already kneeling beside the shepherd. "He moved his tail," Daniel replied. "It's small, but it's something." Liam gently reached out and stroked the dog's head. "It's okay," he whispered. "You don't have to be scared. I'm here." And then it happened again. Thump. Then another. Storm's tail, responding. Slowly, like a drum beat growing louder, more certain. Daniel and Eleanor exchanged glances. A flicker of awe crossed Eleanor's face. The dog's eyes remained closed, his body limp, but his tail was alive. "He likes you," Daniel said softly. Liam beamed. "I'm going to call him Storm," he announced, glancing at the snow still pounding the garage windows, "because we found him in the storm, and he's strong, like a storm." Eleanor blinked. The name fit too well. And somehow, with Liam's declaration, the dog was no longer just a stray. They had named him, claimed him. He wasn't it anymore. He was Storm. "Liam," Eleanor said gently, "remember what we talked about. When the storm ends, we have to call animal control. He might belong to someone." "No," Liam said, his voice suddenly firm. "He doesn't. That's why he was alone. He picked us, Mommy. He came to us." Before Eleanor could respond, Storm's body jerked. A sudden, violent shiver shook him from nose to tail. His breathing quickened, short, shallow, panicked.
"Daniel," Eleanor gasped. "Something's wrong."
Storm began panting erratically, his limbs twitching. "Mummy, he's dying!" Liam cried, panic flooding his voice. "Please, do something!" Eleanor hesitated for a heartbeat. Then she snapped into motion. "Bring him inside," she said. "The garage isn't warm enough. He's not going to make it out here." Daniel blinked. "Are you sure?" "Just do it," she ordered, already turning toward the house. "Liam, go grab more blankets, the warm ones from the linen closet." Without another word, Daniel scooped up the trembling German shepherd. His weight felt lighter than before, as if he were fading right there in Daniel's arms. Inside, they cleared a space by the fireplace. Eleanor knelt to start a fire while Daniel laid Storm down on the rug, wrapping him in the thickest blankets they had. "I have a medical kit in the bathroom," Eleanor said. "It's for people, but maybe something in it can help." When she returned, Liam was back too, struggling under the weight of more blankets and his teddy bear.
"I brought Benny," he said breathlessly, "so Storm knows he's not alone."
They wrapped Storm in layers, tucked the hot water bottle Eleanor had prepared against his chest, and watched. Waited, prayed. "Stay with me," Liam whispered, sitting cross-legged beside the dog. "Please, Storm, stay." And just when they thought he might be stabilizing, everything stopped. The rise and fall of his chest ceased. The stillness was total. "Daniel," Eleanor said sharply, I don't think he's breathing." Liam gasped, frozen with fear. "No, wake up, Storm, wake up." Daniel leaned in, his ear to Storm's muzzle. "Nothing," he whispered. "No breath."
"Do something," Liam sobbed. "Please, Daddy, please."
Without hesitation, Daniel positioned his hands over the dog's chest and began compressions. Not too hard, but steady, rhythmic, desperate.
"Come on," he muttered. "Don't give up now."
Eleanor knelt beside Liam, pulling him close, tears slipping silently down her cheeks.
And then a miracle.
Storm's chest expanded, a sharp breath, then another. "He's breathing!" Daniel cried, falling back on his heels.
"He came back!" Liam shouted, joy and tears spilling together.
Storm's eyes remained closed, but his chest moved again, steady and weak, but alive.
"You did it," Eleanor whispered. "You stayed."
And as the snow roared outside, inside, a fragile thread of life was beginning to stitch itself back together, one breath at a time. Scene 4. The growl in the night. The storm had not relented. If anything, it roared louder as night stretched across the sky, suffocating the little town of Winterbrook beneath a relentless curtain of snow and ice. Inside the Carter house, however, the fire crackled with stubborn warmth, casting dancing shadows across the walls. For a moment, just a moment, everything felt safe. Storm lay curled near the hearth, a cocoon of blankets wrapped around his fragile frame. His breathing had steadied. His body, though still frighteningly thin, no longer trembled with cold. And Liam hadn't left his side once. It was well past the boy's bedtime, but Eleanor didn't have the heart to move him. Not yet. He lay on the couch with one arm stretched towards Storm, his fingers occasionally brushing against the dog's fur, as if tethering him to this world through the gentlest of touches. "Do you think he'll make it through the night?" Eleanor asked softly, her voice nearly swallowed by the fire's quiet crackle. Daniel stood at the window, looking out into the swirling dark. "I don't know," he admitted, "but he's stronger than I thought." "He's protective," she added, watching how Storm's ears twitched every time Liam stirred. Daniel turned toward her. "German shepherds are like that, especially with kids." She nodded slowly. That's what scares me." Daniel gave a small smile, more tired than amused. "Because Liam's already decided he's ours."
"No," she whispered, "because I'm starting to want that too."
Before he could reply, Storm stirred, not gently, not like before. His ears perked, his head lifted slightly. Then a low, guttural growl rumbled from deep in his throat. Daniel froze. "What is it, boy?" Storm didn't respond. His golden eyes locked onto the front door. His body was still weak, trembling with effort, but he pulled himself to his feet. Wobbly, determined. "Storm?" Liam sat up, alarmed. "What's wrong?" "Stay back," Eleanor said sharply, her eyes narrowing. Storm's growl deepened. His fur bristled. The firelight threw fierce shadows across his face, transforming the once weak dog into something else entirely, something feral, focused. Daniel stepped cautiously toward the window. The outside world was a blur of snow and darkness. At first he saw nothing, just wind and cold, but then movement, a shadow shifting where there should be none, a figure maybe, just for a second.
"There's something out there," he said, his voice quiet. An animal? Eleanor asked, rising to her feet. I can't tell. And then Storm barked, loud, sharp, commanding.
The suddenness of it made Liam jump. Storm pushed himself forward, his legs shaking, but his intention unmistakable. He was ready to confront whatever was out there. "Hey, easy," Daniel said, stepping between Storm and the door. "It's probably just a deer or something."
But even as he said it, he didn't believe it.
Storm didn't back down. He didn't bark again. Instead, he stared, his body stiff, his breathing shallow but steady. His focus never wavered. "Should I check the back door?" Daniel asked. "Do it," Eleanor whispered. "Make sure everything's locked." Daniel disappeared into the kitchen. The back of the house was secure. No open windows, no footprints. When he returned, Storm hadn't moved, but his growl had stopped. His ears twitched once, then slowly relaxed. He staggered back to his blanket and collapsed, spent. The family stood in silence, staring at the door. "What was that?" Liam asked. "Was it the wind?" "No," Eleanor said, more to herself than to him. "That was something else." They tried to return to their evening. Board games by candlelight, more blankets, hot cocoa. But an unease had settled into the room, lingering like a chill that no fire could quite erase. When bedtime finally came, Liam refused to go to his room. "He'll be scared without me," he said firmly, standing beside Storm like a tiny soldier. "Storm needs rest," Eleanor said gently. "He'll be right here. You can see him in the morning."
"But—"
"Liam," Daniel's voice was calm but firm. "You can't sleep next to a sick dog, buddy. He needs space." Liam's shoulders slumped, but he obeyed. He knelt and wrapped his arms around Storm's neck. The dog nuzzled weakly against him, his tail giving a faint, slow wag. "Good night, Storm," Liam whispered. "I'll see you in the morning." The dog watched him go, his eyes full of something that looked far too knowing for an animal. After tucking Liam in with his stuffed bear and whispered promises that Storm would be okay, Daniel and Eleanor returned to the living room. Storm was still awake. His eyes followed them, silent, steady, always watching. "What do you make of that?" Eleanor asked, settling into the couch. "That reaction to the door?" Daniel rubbed his temples. "I don't know, maybe trauma, maybe instinct. Or maybe," she said softly, "he knows something we don't." They sat in silence, the fire burning low, the storm howled, the wind moaned. And in the flickering light, the dog named Storm watched the door, as if waiting for something only he could see. Let me know when you're ready for Scene 5, where the supernatural truly begins to take hold. Scene 5, the faceless one. The house had gone quiet, save for the gentle crackle of dying embers in the fireplace. Eleanor stirred in the armchair, shifting under the weight of exhaustion. Across the room, Daniel dozed in a second chair, his head tilted, arms folded. On the rug, wrapped in a cocoon of blankets and the faint warmth of the fire, Storm slept. His breathing was steady, if still shallow, and for the first time in hours, Eleanor let herself begin to hope.
But that hope was fragile.
She was just drifting into a restless sleep when it happened. Scratch. A faint sound, barely there. Click. A door, the front door. Eleanor sat bolt upright, her heart skipping. She shook Daniel's shoulder.
"Daniel," she whispered, urgent. "Did you hear that?"
He stirred, groggy. "What?" I think the front door just opened." His eyes shot open. They moved together, quietly down the hall, pausing first at Liam's room. He was asleep, curled into a ball with his stuffed bear. Safe. Then down the stairs. The living room was dim in the fire's last light, and Storm's bed was empty.
"Where is he?" Eleanor whispered, scanning the room.
Daniel stepped forward, eyes sweeping the shadows, and then he saw it. The front door, ajar. Snowflakes danced in the open space, blown in by the wind, settling across the floor like tiny ghosts.
"I locked that," Daniel murmured. "I know I did."
Eleanor's eyes were wide. Could Storm have opened it? Not with the deadbolt. They approached the door cautiously. The porch light spilled a dull circle onto the snow-covered yard, but beyond that, just blackness. "Storm!" Daniel called. "Storm, come here!" Nothing. No response, no bark, no movement. "He wouldn't just leave," Eleanor said, clutching her robe tighter around her. Not like this, not after all we... Before she could finish, Liam's sleepy voice broke the silence. "Where's Storm?" They turned. He was standing at the top of the stairs, rubbing his eyes. "He needed to go outside," Eleanor said quickly, her voice too calm. "Daddy's helping him." Liam's brow furrowed. "Why does Daddy have a flashlight?"
Then a bark. Loud, urgent, Storm's voice.
Followed by a shout from Daniel. Eleanor rushed to the window, Liam close behind. The flashlight beam danced wildly in the dark. She could make out Daniel crouched in the snow. Storm stood beside him, alert, barking, furious.
But they weren't alone.
Something moved in the trees beyond the property line, a figure. Dark, still, watching.
"What is that?" Liam asked, his voice barely a whisper.
Eleanor squinted. At first it looked like a person. Tall, dressed in black, hooded. But then the light shifted, and her blood ran cold. There was no face, no features, just darkness where a face should be. She gasped, one hand flying to her mouth.
"Who is that person?" Liam asked, eyes wide. "Do they know Storm?"
Outside, Storm suddenly stopped barking. The rage in his posture melted away, replaced by something else. Recognition. He stepped forward, cautiously, slowly, tail still. The figure raised one hand, not in threat, in greeting. And then, as Daniel stepped forward, flashlight aimed toward the trees, the figure and Storm both vanished into the tree line. Gone. No sound, no movement, just a disturbed patch of snow where they had stood.
"No," Liam breathed. "Storm!"
Eleanor pulled him back from the window. Her voice was calm but firm. "Liam, get away from the glass." "But Storm's out there," he cried. "That person took him."
"I know," she said, though her voice trembled. "I need you to go upstairs. Please, go to your room and wait for me."
Liam hesitated, tears beginning to fall. But something in her expression must have registered. He nodded silently and ran up the stairs. Eleanor didn't wait. She grabbed her coat, her boots, her flashlight, and followed Daniel's footprints into the snow. The cold hit her like a slap, but she pushed forward, heart hammering, following the sounds of her husband's voice. He stood at the edge of the woods, flashlight cutting through the trees.
"They vanished," he said, breathless. "Just disappeared. I saw him. Storm run straight toward it like he knew it. And then they were gone."
Eleanor's voice cracked. "Did you see its face?" Daniel turned to her slowly. There was no face. They stood in silence as snow swirled around them, the trees whispering with wind. Somewhere out there, Storm was gone, but not lost, because it hadn't felt like he'd run away. It had felt like he was going home. Scene 6. The cabin in the clearing. The morning sun rose over Winterbrook, turning the snow-covered world into a blinding expanse of white. But for Eleanor and Daniel Carter, the light brought no peace, only questions that refused to fade. Storm was gone. The police had offered little more than polite skepticism. The figure with no face, the vanishing, none of it made sense. Daniel didn't even try to explain it fully. How could he? But Liam knew his childlike honesty cut through the adult world of logic like a beam through fog. "They took him," he said every time they tried to comfort him. "But he's not gone. He's waiting." By noon, the roads had been cleared enough to allow travel. Eleanor had wanted to wait, to be cautious, but Liam insisted, and Daniel agreed. So they bundled up, loaded into the car, and drove to the edge of the forest where Storm had disappeared.
And then they walked.
Through knee-deep snow, through tangled trees and aching silence. They followed paw prints, fresh, despite the previous night's storm. Big ones, German shepherd. The tracks led them deep into the woods, winding like a path only Storm could carve. And then they stopped. A clearing, and in its center, a cabin. Old, weather-beaten, its roof heavy with snow. Smoke curled from the chimney, and fresh paw prints led straight to the front door.
"He's in there," Liam whispered. "I know it."
Eleanor felt something shift inside her, a sensation like gravity pulling at her chest. She didn't want to step closer, but Liam was already moving. The cabin door creaked open. Storm burst out, strong and graceful, his coat gleaming in the sunlight as if he had been reborn. He barked joyfully and ran straight to Liam, knocking the boy over in a blur of wagging tail and wet kisses.
"You're okay," Liam cried, wrapping his arms around Storm's neck. "You're okay."
Daniel and Eleanor stood frozen. Their eyes weren't on Storm, but on the doorway behind him. The figure stood there again, cloaked in black, hood raised. Still no face. "What do you want?" Daniel called out, stepping protectively in front of his family. "Why are you following us?" The figure didn't move, didn't speak, didn't threaten. Storm sat beside it, perfectly calm, like a soldier, reporting for duty. "Liam," Eleanor said carefully, "come back to us. Now." But the boy didn't move. His eyes were locked with the figure's, or where its eyes should have been. "They're Storm's friend," he said softly. They've been looking for him since the storm started." Eleanor and Daniel stared at their son in stunned silence. "They talked to me," Liam continued, tapping his temple. "Not with words, with pictures in my head." The figure turned slightly, raising its arm, not in aggression, but as if bestowing something invisible.
"They say Storm belonged to someone, a soldier. His name was Caleb.
Liam's voice faltered, but he pushed on.
Caleb was hurt, killed. Storm saw it happen and he ran. He got lost in the snow, but someone's looking for him. The man who hurt Caleb. He knows Storm saw."
Eleanor went cold. "Are you saying someone might come for the dog?" "They think he might," Liam nodded. "That's why they took Storm, to keep him safe, and us too." The figure slowly pulled something from its coat and held it out. Daniel stepped forward to receive it. A dog tag. "Western Caleb, U.S. Army."
"Proof."
Storm padded back to Liam's side, pressing against him protectively. "He wants to stay," Liam said. "He wants to protect us now." The faceless figure lowered its head, a gesture of recognition, of trust. It turned, walked back into the cabin. The door closed behind it. And then the cabin shimmered. The wood blurred, edges softening, lines bleeding into light. Within seconds it was gone.
No smoke, no door, no cabin.
Only snow, only forest, and Storm, who looked up at them with golden eyes that shimmered with knowing. They walked home in silence, Storm leading the way as if he had always known the path. When they stepped back into their yard, something shifted. Their home looked the same, but they weren't. They were different now.
Changed.
Daniel opened the back door and froze. Drawers open, cushions tossed. Their home had been searched. "Someone was here," he said, his voice tight. Storm moved forward instantly, nose to the floor, tail stiff, growling low. "Looking for something," Eleanor whispered. "Looking for him." "They didn't find it," Daniel said, pulling the dog tag from his pocket, "because it was with us." Storm sat beside Liam, tense and focused.
"He knows their scent now," Liam said quietly. "If they come back, he'll know."
And in that moment, Eleanor believed it, all of it. Because Storm wasn't just a dog anymore. He was their guardian, their witness, their protector, their Storm.